I could stay awake just to hear you breathing, watch you smile while you are sleeping, while you're far away and dreaming. I could spend my life in this sweet surrender.
Surface crocheting, guys, that is what it is called with hand knitting. So we're gonna start off with the border. Now if you don't want to do a border, go ahead and fast forward through this part, but this is how we start off. So you're gonna insert it like a loop. Do not make a knot. I made a mistake with that. You don't want a knot because you're gonna sew this down. So as I'm showing you, you don't want a knot. You want it nice, no knots. So you're either going to sew it down. You can even hot glue it down if it's decor. But you're going to insert it like a loop, a stitch, and just about to the joint on your index finger, about that size. And I haven't sewed that down yet, guys. I'm just moving through the tutorial. But insert it through both, as you saw, both strands. And we're going to be skipping. We're going to be skipping a stitch. And just as you see me doing, pulling that working yarn right up through, working from bottom up. Pulling a stitch or that stitch right up through. So again, skipping. Now you can go through every single insert, every single, I'll call it stitch. That is a lot of work. You're gonna need more than 23 yards. But here I am simply skipping. So you see there's either that one or skip. And it looks just as good. Now, this is a surface crochet border. There is another way to do a border if you have seen it, where it wraps around the edge a little bit. But I figured to go ahead and do a surface crochet for the whole blanket design. So this is how you do it. You start off by inserting a stitch, a loop, and then simply digging your fingers down into that stitch, down into the blanket, pulling the working yarn up through. So that is a little knot right there. I told you I'm doing the tying method. This blanket is for decor, so I'm okay with just tying on more yarn. So you want to make sure your stitches are not twisted. Now do you see how I'm pulling on the working yarn and pulling back on the working yarn to adjust the length? It's so very simple. Just be pulling up that working yarn right through the blanket, right through the previous stitch. And that is how you do a surface crocheted border. So I'm using fluffy chenille loops and threads, guys. At 23 yards, it comes for one skein. For this blanket design, all I needed was one skein of yellow. It was enough to do border, coming just under a standard size crib length, and making 4 sets of flowers. So as you see what I'm doing, I am showing you pulling that working yarn right through. I'm keeping it about the height of my index finger, the joint on my index finger, the joint. Adjusting it here by pulling on the working yarn. But let's say you want to completely undo it. Just pull that working yarn back. Just pull it all back. And that is how you undo your work. I want to go ahead and demonstrate that. Because let's say you're not liking the sizing, it's coming out too tight. Simply pull on the working yarn and it will undo all your work, whatever spot you want undone. Now again, I am skipping stitches here. I am skipping here because it will be way too time consuming, way too much work to do every single stitch going up the border here. But if that's what you want, go for it. I don't really see too much of a difference. It does make it a little bit more compact, more fuller, but not too much of a difference. So this is what it should be looking like. So now when you get up to your corner, I'm fast forwarding through this, guys, a little bit. You're simply just going to be working, doing the same thing, but pulling your yarn in the direction you want to go in. And that is the key with surface crocheting. You're simply pulling your working yarn in the direction that you want to go in. So I'm curving around the blanket here. I'm doing nothing different, pulling the working yarn right through it and just simply curving, pulling it towards the direction I'm going in. And I emphasize that because that is how you do the flowers. Any design, actually. I even have a tutorial on how to do a heart. You're pulling the working yarn in the flow that you want it to go in, the pattern that you want it to go in. So this is it, guys. Work all the way around your blanket. I am fast forwarding through this a little bit because it'll be extremely repetitive. This is the whole pattern. Start out by inserting your stitch. Don't tie a knot because you're going to either sew down or, which I didn't explain this, but if you figured it to have a little bit longer of a tail, to just tie it in, to just tie the tail in if you don't want to do the sewing method. I would, if it's for decor, you can even do a little bit of hot glue just to pin it, not to fill it, just to pin it, lock it in. But this is it. We're working in the border, the side of the blanket. We're surface crocheting a border by skipping a stitch because it'll just be way too much work to do every single stitch working around the blanket, unless that is what you want. And you're pulling your yarn in the direction that you want it to flow in, because that is key right there when it comes to surface crocheting, specifically with flowers, as I will be showing you right after this. But this is how it should be looking. It is just the surface. So I'm coming up to the end here. Go ahead and pause it. But once you get up to the end, I'm going to show you how to secure it down and then choose your method. Either tying in a knot, using a very minimum hot glue just to pin it if it's for decor, or handheld sewing machine. So you see, this is where I started. I'm simply going to go ahead and knit right through it, pull the working yarn right up from the bottom. You're going to have two little loose tails right there. Now this is all preference. You can actually kind of figure it out and see how you want to lock it in. But I'm taking one of those tails and I'm pushing it up through the first stitch that I have done, pulling it through the last stitch I just did. So doing all this tying down here. So go ahead and rewind that, watch it again. It's truly preference right here. And now do you see I have a little tail? guys, because this is decor, I'm either gonna handheld sewing machine, or I can just use a little bit of minimum glue up to just mold it down. I don't want to tie knots, but there you go. Okay guys, our flowers. So this is all preference. My color is lavender. You're simply going to make a slip knot, just as we started with our foundation chain for the blanket. And I'm pinning mine right in the middle. I wanted to go ahead and demonstrate the purple flower. When I did 4 yellows, I wanted to demonstrate the purple. You see what I'm doing? I made a slip knot, a stitch joint of my index finger length, and you see how I just slipped it right in? I found a stitch in the blanket and I slipped it right underneath through, and then I simply just pushed in my tail on the bottom. That is going to be used to tie with my other end, which I'll be showing you how I cast off with the flowers. So a lot of observation here. I'm taking a next stitch and I simply curled the purple yarn around it and then pushed that new stitch right through the previous stitch. So now I'm going to find my next stitch right next to it. Take my purple yarn, curl it around. Do you notice how I am curling it around the edge? Then I take that stitch and push it through the previous stitch. And remember what I said, pulling the working yarn in the flow that you want it to go in. That is what I'm doing right here. So you see I'm curling it again. Taking that new stitch, pushing it through the previous stitch. And you see, I just made like a C right here. So I'm making my first petal. Now, I highly recommend using fluffy chenille or any kind of teddy bear variation yarn because it really hides the imperfections. It really provides a lot of fluff. And you see how I traced my finger? This is all skill, guys. You are drawing a flower with yarn. Now, do you see what I'm doing? Now I'm transitioning here. I'm gonna go to the next petal. So you gotta kind of make the judgment to either curl it, your flower yarn, to curl it around the blanket yarn, the stitch. Now, why am I curling it? Because it's going to hide effectively the white yarn. Do you see there? You see no white. I don't want no white showing through the petals. So that is why I am curling it around an edge. And I do demonstrate this to show you how if you don't make the effort to hide that blanket color yarn, it will show through. So like I said, this is all skill. I don't really do surface crocheting. So my flowers, and it's a daisy, guys, so the petals don't gotta be the most perfect. But the more you do this, the more pro you will become. So this is really involving a lot of practicing and skill. So if you do not get it right the first time, it's not like, oh, I'm not getting it. It's just practice. So I do recommend maybe creating a practice canvas, a little square piece to practice doing this method. That is why I wanted to demonstrate on the purple one versus my yellow, because some of my yellows I like, it could have been better, but the purple one I felt more confident, like, okay, this is coming out this is gonna after doing a couple of them, it just naturally starts to flow. As I said, I don't really do surface crocheting flowers, but this is a method right here. Curling it around the blanket stitch, taking that stitch, tucking it into the previous loop. And you gotta be the judge and make it, if you're gonna curl it around the blanket stitch or kind of just tuck it underneath it. And so do you see? It's making almost like a heart shape right here with this yarn. It is so fluffy, so fuzzy and crazed out. That is the perfect yarn, guys, to make daisies. Perfect yarn to do surface crocheting with. Remember, I am making these loops tightly knitted. And I want to show you, if I continue drawing out a heart, I really can, because it's so fluffy. I just got to kind of visualize that I'm drawing a heart. And I want to just show that right there, that I could have made a heart right here. But instead, I'm going just for daisies, just flowers on this blanket. I also show you how this can also be a butterfly. So do you see how I'm curling it? You gotta be the judge right there. And even practice. See, okay, if I curl it on this side, does it hide the blanket yarn color? Nope, it doesn't. Okay, undo it. Pull the working yarn back, as I see. And I want to show you right here. Let's see, I just tuck it in. Tuck it underneath. Pull it through the previous stitch. And do you see? It is showing. Can't have that. So I'm going to undo it, pull in the working yarn, and now I'm going to curl it around an edge, usually like the top edge. So you see, it's going to cover it. Voila, just like that. So that is why we're curling it. And you got to be the judge, because sometimes you can just tuck it underneath. Just simply try it. Try both ways, and if the yarn isn't showing the blanket color, then you're good. But trace it out with your finger. Keep stopping and tracing it out, because this truly is skill, guys. We are drawing here with yarn. So I highly recommend to practice on a small square that you can knit, and then you feel good and confident, then proceed. I will be writing that in the description box so everyone can see that. Now let's say you want a butterfly. So you see, just keep drawing it out with your finger. But I'm going to show you right here. If you want a butterfly, you can do a heart. You can do a butterfly with this specific yarn because it is so fuzzy. It's a teddy bear variation yarn. I believe even with faux fur, you can do this, which I show you with the heart design. You can hand knit with faux fur. So I want to show you. Let's say you want a butterfly. So I'm trying to give you the better visualization here. But let's say you want a butterfly. You will continue to color in the middle completely and then work it out, doing a C shape. And it looks like a butterfly to me, guys. You just gotta add a little bit of embellishments. And there you go. So I was debating, should I do a butterfly? But this is truly for my daughter Daisy, guys. So I just kept it Daisies. There you go. So knit tight, take your time, and you will become a pro at surface crocheting flowers. I'm pretty sure there are other methods, but this is the method that I taught myself, that I figured out myself. So there you go, just keep watching. Watch how I curl it. Watch how I judge it and curl it. When I'm going up, when I'm going down, when I'm transitioning. You want to make sure you leave a little circle in the middle because that's where we're going to put the inner part for the daisy. Or sunflower if you're doing. Or whatever flower you're doing. But this looks really pretty, guys. It's, again, just practice and practice. Because I would say my purple flowers came out way better versus my yellow. So there you go. Remember, a golden key. Curling it, as you see me doing again, to hide that blanket yarn color, and pulling your yarn in the direction that you want it to flow in to create. So go ahead and keep observing, and I will come back when we are finishing off the petals here. Now this part I want to show you, I'm again, to be your own judge, curling it. So I feel like no, it's not going to work if I go that direction. I'm going to again curl it around, as I told you, usually the top edge. The top edge, you want to curl it around, usually, to create the best perfect C shape you can. So like I said, surface crocheting, guys, it is possible to do it with size 6 super bulky, and that includes faux fur. One of my brands I absolutely love is Loops and Threads, which I do demonstrate in the last very short tutorial on doing a heart. So I would say faux fur, fluffy chenille Loops and Threads, size 7 right here. Great yarns to surface crochet with. Now do you see how I'm transitioning up now? I'm getting closer to where I first started. So I'm being the judge right here. I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna curl it, twist it around the stitch. Pull that loop right through. Might be a little bit of a struggle or tight, just as long as it gets through and it looks good. All right, so I'm coming up. So there you go, I'm checking, is it nicely covered up? Do I need to go any further? So we got one little part there. We want it absolutely perfect. So as you just saw, I undid my work. That is okay. If it's just undo it until you get it perfect. And there you go. So once you're satisfied, use some scissors, guys. I didn't have my scissors with me, but you can snap it with your hands. Now you see how I took that tail, a long tail, and I pushed it right through that loop from bottom up. And I pushed it down, tugged it down. A relatively long tail. And see, there you go. Look how pretty that is. It could have been a butterfly right here had I filled in the middle. So now I'm going to take this tail after pushing it through that loop from bottom up. Now I'm going to push it down. I'm going to find a stitch. Now, as I said, guys, you could use, if it's for decor, a little bit of glue or sew it down. Or I'm actually going to tie this down, actually. I just didn't want my border to be tied. Knots. Now, you're going to cut a relatively long piece to be safe. Now, I'm going to take one end and insert it on any side, any edge. I chose the left bottom. Now I'm going to take the other end and pull it through the opposite side of it, the right bottom. Now I said cut a relatively long piece. Guys, I really eyeballed this. Just a nice long piece. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking that same end and pushing it through the top edge. So what I am doing here is I'm coloring. I'm lacing it through. Basically trying to fill in the space with my color. So we're simply coloring with our yarn. By taking either end now and just overlapping it, poking it from the bottom through, and then just overlapping it, always trying to target an edge to edge. There is no rhyme, there is no pattern to this, guys. It's simply just coloring it, trying to fill in, cover all the blanket color. So this is what it's going to be looking like. You got both ends hanging out, and just keep filling it in until you're satisfied. This is why I say this yarn is really great for surface crocheting, because it's so fuzzy and fluffy. It camouflages imperfections. It looks really good. Like, you can't even tell I'm overlapping here and there. It just looks like one big fuzz. So you see I messed up right there. I pulled it out on the same spot. Simply just pull it right back through, find another spot. This is truly my method, guys. I just kind of figured some way. I'm like, how can I do this without sewing or hot gluing? How can I do this? And this is my method right here. So there you go. I pulled up both ends, and you could tie a knot as I'm going to show you right here. So all preference right here. With this yarn, you won't even tell that I tied a knot. With regular chunky chenille size 7, you might possibly be able to tell. So I wouldn't tie a knot then on the surface of it. Leave your ends on the bottom both and tie the knot there. But I tied a knot on top, and now I'm going to do it again. If you don't want to tie a knot, and it's for decor, I don't see anything wrong with using the most minimum and with precision, a little bit of hot glue. Or if you don't mind the extra work, I would suggest sewing it, and it is possible to sew it. Or you can just do what I just did. Now I'm perfecting it here, cutting off these ends. And there you go. So, much preference right here when it comes to casting it off. So my little ends, because it's decor, guys, I am going to use very minimum glue. I'm not going to sew it because that's a lot of time right there. And it's for decor. So now I'm taking my other 2 purple ends for the flowers, and I'm simply tying them in 2 knots. Same thing what I did for the yellow. And I'm all about security here, so I am going to hot glue as I'm showing you. I'm going to mold it down, put very minimum. Because it's for decor, I'm not worried about the glue ever coming undone. But I do recommend a little bit of sewing if it is going to be utilized. But there you go. With practice, guys, with practice. My other tutorial, next tutorial, is on the finger knitting, guys. But this is what it should. This is what mine looks like with practice, like I said. But this was really pretty, though. I hope you guys enjoyed it.